First, if you can introduce yourself to the people that are listening to the interview.
Yes, hi, my name is Kaloyan Konstantinov. I've been working as a journalist for the past 14 years now, I guess. And I specialize in international relations, disinformation, propaganda, and as such, I also teach a course on international disinformation and propaganda at AUBG in Blagoevgrad. And yeah, I like pizza also.
Okay, thank you. My first question will be in simple terms. Why does media literacy matters today more than ever before? What would you say?
Well, before the main difficulty for people, especially for those who lived under communism, was finding information. Information for the past more than 50 years has been the main currency in the world, the main source of power. And getting to that information, to books, to movies, to cinema, to whatever, gossip even, was vital for people. Nowadays, that's not the case anymore. Nowadays, you have so much information, you're literally drowning in it. Uh, Thousands of movies, millions of books come every year. TV series, TV stations we have back in the day in communist Bulgaria had only one TV station, and in many other places, even non-communist countries, five, six, 10. Now you have literally hundreds, no matter where you are on the globe. And the key ability nowadays is not to access information, but to know which information to access, what to believe and what not, because we have a limited hours in the day, and even more so, limited time span of attention that we can a certain amount of information that we can absorb during the day. And so, especially with social media, with the brain rotting that people nowadays use, it's becoming vital to being able to restrict your media diet or to support this media hygiene. And media literacy is the key to this. And I believe that, when we say media literacy, of course, we don't mean only, the news, but in the widest possible terms. This is vital for the development of people and for strategic and national defense reasons, by the way.
Okay, you mentioned that you have a lot of experience, and based on this experience, what makes this information so effective at spreading?
Well, most of the time, the information is effective at spreading for two reasons. The first is that there is some truth to it, after all. Disinformation, misinformation. Nowadays people do confuse the terms, and propaganda also. I mean, it's becoming harder and harder to differentiate them. But the main thing is that there is a grain of truth, as we say in Bulgarian, to it, because most of the lies, most of this information, any kind, Russian, Chinese, American, Israeli, Iranian, you name it, is based on facts and based on the truth. Then this is heavily distorted and manipulated. But then the people seeing a lot of the damage that's being done in the past decades and even centuries, they are very skeptical of their governments. They're very skeptical of authority, and with good reason. I have good friends who are researchers, especially in this area, and they always say, except for the craziest of, conspiracy theories like the moon is fake or we are controlled by lizard people, there is this truth to it that, there are secret societies that run the world. I mean, there may be not some demonic cabals, but there are such societies. There are lies that are being taught that, about the quality of living, about crimes being covered up. There are cases where the secret services, CIA or KGB or whatever you name the country again, has committed crimes and murders, assassinations. I mean, most of the conspiration theories at some point were true or in some variation. And this makes it extremely hard for people to say, okay, yeah, it was true the first few times, but now it is not.
Mhm.
And this is being used, I have to underline this is being used both by the West and by the East. True, with different, up to a certain point and in different ways. We cannot say that they're equal, definitely not. But there is this truth to them. And also, as I mentioned, there is this growing distrust among the people and the people in power. And
Mhm.
this is very evident in the West with the Epstein files. Now the biggest scandal, this and Donald Trump and the war in Iran. This is very evident in Russia and the illegitimate war in Ukraine. Very evident in China with their mass surveillance and no access for the mass population to information. And the second
Mhm.
thing is the second big reason is psychology. Most of the time, disinformation, propaganda, all of those things are based on existing psychological preconditions in humans that are entirely natural, that are totally normal that they exist. But then they take advantage of this, like the feeling of the fear. One of the strongest psychological conditions that these techniques take advantage of is fear. Everybody is afraid for their well-being. Everybody is afraid that if they don't do something, they'll get hurt. Their families will get hurt, and this is a very obvious example. But there are also a much smarter examples that they use. Pride, love, sexual desire. These are very strong biological preconditions in humans that are then being used in stereotypes, in constructing these narratives. If we dive deeper into the psychoanalysis of Jung and Freud, and of course more modern versions, because now they're a bit outdated, some of their views, but especially Jung's archetypes, the archetype of the hero, which now we see is with Zelensky, or the archetype, with the underdog very often, which we see a lot in movies, but also with a lot of influencers and stuff. And then at some point, they're being utilized for political or financial gains.
Okay, you mentioned, I mean, with all of the things that are going on in the world right now, we have a lot of material to talk about this, especially of the disinformation that is going on social media. I feel like algorithms play a big role. Would you say that these algorithms on social media platforms shape the way that people see reality, and how?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There are numerous documentaries and investigations being made. I think one of the most popular was the social media dilemma, if I'm not mistaken, but correct me if
Mhm.
I'm wrong. Yes, of course. Again, these social media, they operate using the same psychological preconditions that I mentioned earlier, but they also, a lot of them, you notice, they operate on the principles of gambling, which gambling, as you know, is not a physical addiction, is not, like heroin or like some other, or even cigarettes, which, by the way, even cigarettes are more psychological than physical addiction. But gambling, if you look at slot machines, especially, and the way that they constantly turn, and every few seconds or a minute you get a new reward for your brain. That's the same way you see, Instagram, TikTok, the most popular social media nowadays operate on. And this is then, each person, each individual, from the moment that they create their profiles, and even before that, because we know Google and not on YouTube, all those websites and search engines, they have a profile on you. The moment you create your social media profile, it immediately gets linked with those connections, cookies, whatever, and with your other connections, and it builds your a digital copy of you in the online world, that then gets manipulated, and it says, okay, so this person likes this brand of food, let's show him more similar, that is innocent to more or less. But then somehow, this brand or these movies or these interests, they are more right wing associated or left wing, or this person tends to be more racist or more liberal, it depends. And then whoever holds the power to these algorithms. We know that China with TikTok heavily influences and manipulates the algorithms that it shows in the West and in the East. We know that Facebook, we know the big case with Cambridge Analytica that led to the first term of Donald Trump, but not only. All those things are being heavily manipulated against us. Teams of psychologists, of hundreds of psychologists, programmers, data analysts are working against you and against me and against everybody else, and it is extremely hard to defeat them on our own.
Do you think that in these situations, the fact checking is enough to deal with this manipulation that we are constantly being like led to? Or and if you think why is it enough or
Fact
not?
checking.
Hmm.
I wholeheartedly dislike fact checking as a means to, you know, fighting against disinformation and propaganda, because it is proven by now that people who trust propaganda and disinformation, those things, they're not the same people who look at fact checking tools or websites or initiatives. Moreover, sometimes, you know, these fact checkers, the people who believe the propaganda when something is like, oh, actually, no, it is not true, you know, because you're stupid and you don't know this and this fact. And people are like, yeah, right, you know, you're making things up. It's not me who is believing the false narratives. It's very, again, this is very psychologically connected, and depending on the predisposition and background, historical and societal of people that look at these things. But me personally, as such person, as such individual, is the fact checking initiatives always struck me as very stale, very boring, very, you know, as if, you know, some official document comes out and saying, hey, that's not the truth, trust us, guys, you know. While people do see that there is something fishy going on, fact checking is really, you know, lacking behind on fighting the root causes. It is fighting the symptoms, but then again, as I mentioned, very often, I wouldn't say 9 out of 10 cases, but very, very often, actually, our governments and people in power have, I don't want to use words that have to be censored, but they fail. They fail us. They lie to us. They hide the truth, and then the fact checking comes as unauthentic very often. So the root causes are different, and for me, fact checking initiatives are more of a way for people who do them and for the people who know the truth, whatever it is, to believe, to feel comfortable that they're actually doing something, while in fact they fail.
Okay. And my last question, what would you say is the one simple habit that most of the people can develop in order to stop this misleading content or to easily like realize that it is misleading or disinformation?
So the first should be that you should always read multiple sources, even ones that contradict your own opinion. I'm not saying, you know, go deep into the dark web and, you know, find some lunatic spewing, you know, propaganda that, you know, as I
Mhm,
said, the moon is made of cheese or it's, you know, not real.
mhm,
But look at, for example, I'll give an example with the Ukrainian war. Of course, I read Western sources, I read Ukrainian sources, look from their perspective, but I also read Russian sources like Russia Today, Sputnik, Itartas,
mhm,
you know, the not the official agency of the Russian Federation, and other such sources, Chinese, Indian sources, even Iranian that have big, powerful, and Turkish sources also. They have in English, you know, publications. I don't speak of those languages. It is important because they are on one hand official, but on another hand, they do, you know, manipulate the facts. But also the West manipulates the facts to a certain degree. So get a feeling of what's happening from both sides, and, you know, be aware of the narratives that are happening, and try to counter position them against the truth, the reality that you're seeing. Because if someone is telling you, hey, the economy is great, you like Donald Trump saying the economy, the American economy is booming, it's fantastic, look at the statistics. but you are feeling that your life is getting worse and your friend's life is getting worse. But then if Russia publishes a report saying, hey, actually, we found out through analysis that this and this, situation in America is not so good, then maybe check their facts against the Western facts. But this really takes time and effort to develop. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes really a lot of years and a lot of reading. My second advice that I always give is read classical philosophy and classical literature. Because,
Mhm.
long story short, because I won't speak for too much on that topic, those people back in the day, they didn't care about fame, they didn't care about money, and also they survived through the test of time. What it was valuable, what it was sensible. Nowadays, we have a lot of publishers, a lot of authors that only want, clickbaits, that only want to sell their books, that only want to put facts that are easy to digest, that are, half the truth, not so honest. And moreover, the authors back then, they delved into the soul of humanity. Dostoevsky, Goethe, Tolstoy, Steinbeck, even Tolkien, they delved into the psyche of the human beings, the emotions. And in the end, as I said in the beginning, what defines us is our evolution and our biology and our psychology. And this ultimately leads to the causes of Epstein, the cause of Trump and Putin's behavior, of narcissists, of sociopaths, of politicians, of what great power does to your mind. So read these classical authors because they lay bare the human existence. And once you know these fundamental truths and conditions, you can then very easily spot on how people are behaving and why, and governments. And also, last but not least, challenge your own way of thinking and your own stereotypes and whatever you like, because most of the time it is really culturally based. I'll give this example. I behave in one way in front of other people, I behave in another way in front of my family. We know of many such cases, when people who are very nice to their families are ruthlessly brutal in the outside world. So at any given moment, a few versions of ourselves exist in the world. So this is true also to countries and to companies and to whatever it is. So always question who benefits out of certain actions and thoughts and ideas, and who suffers from them. It is very often that yes, you may benefit for the actions of your own government or party or family or even your own actions, but many other people suffer from them. So always challenge yourselves, always ask, why do I think that? What led me to believe that, certain people are good? Is it just my childhood traumas? Or is it just my childhood, favorites or family or background society? Always challenge yourselves first, and then coupled with reading and learning more, you will get to know, by knowing yourself and your emotions and what drives you, very often is instinct, hormones, hunger, hate, desire. You will see that other people act in the same way. And I know this may sound a bit silly, but this is actually the key to also understanding this information and media literacy.